Am I hearing something? This one, right? It's coming in 4. Are you hearing it? Oh, here. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of City Chatter, the Grand Forks City podcast, talking about everything city government. I'm your host, John Bernstrom, Public Information Officer for the City of Grand Forks. And today we've gone through every council member at least once in this podcast, and now we get the big man. We get the mayor. Mayor Bochenski, thank you for joining us.
Good, thanks, John. This is, this was just a thought that the two of us had quite a while ago. So it's now we're 2 months in. Has it been going good so far?
I think it's been working all right. Some of it was getting our council members, on board. Not that they weren't on board, but it was just different.
Getting the scheduling.
And now they've all done it once, and I've reached out to them. I go, we're starting.
I've seen most of them. Yeah, you're pretty painless. You're not. You don't really dig the knife in, so that's been good. So hopefully that'll continue today.
I've got to hook them in so I can get them the second time. No.
Fair enough.
So Mayor, yesterday in the city council meeting, the approval of your 2024 budget. Can you talk about some of the particulars? What got passed and what's going to move forward for 2024?
Yeah, so this, that was pretty exciting to finally get that done. You're talking 4 or 5 months worth of work, and then, you get about a 7-month rest, and you got to start and do it all over again. My fourth budget as being the mayor. Really, we've always focused on two main things, public safety and infrastructure. This year, we've really expanded that to people and the workforce, and that's really twofold. That's taking care of our city employees so we can, recruit and retain high-quality employees. That was, salaries, that was benefits. We're continuing to raise those and to keep competitive. And the second thing is quality of life features. So we've started to see a shift from economic development where, traditionally we might have bought land, infrastructure ready land, and made other investments to prepare businesses to be able to come into town. Now we've really got a pretty good inventory of that. So we're shifting now. We've created a lot of jobs. If you saw the stat, 1,200 jobs created over the last year was more than Fargo, more than either city in the state. Now that we're creating all these jobs, now it's time to to continue to work on workforce. So we're looking at shifting some economic development dollars towards more community amenities and things like the Children's Museum, things like the indoor turf and aquatics facility. So a bit of a shift in how we look at economic development. Some of it just really is coming from the success we've had at drawing business into Grand Forks.
As mayor, when you're looking at this economic development stuff, it's like an ecosystem, right? There's not one thing that draws. There's not one thing that keeps, it's kind of a little bit here, a little bit there. At what point in this budget process were you like, hey, maybe this is an opportunity where we can shift some of that economic development money?
Well, just statewide, we've had a lot of conversations on workforce. We've had a lot of conversations with local businesses, or local manufacturers there. The tides are starting to turn, but we can do a lot more, and I think that's going to cost us in the future if we can't. So it's really it's not any one particular aha moment. It's just hundreds of conversations and figuring out what the path forward. And you're right, it's not just a children's museum or aquatics and turf facility, boutique hotel, the Beacon by Epic, the CTE Center. Just seeing other developments for other quality of life, like the Listen Center. You tear down the Travel Lodge and you have Listen Center. Tore down the Ambassador Hotel, tore down the Holiday Inn. So some of it's been addition by subtraction, but you just look at all the construction, all the new features and amenities coming, even throw Franklin on 4th there, Memorial Village with the softball diamond. I think that there is a true commitment, for the first time in a long time, at least since I've been around since 2001, that from top to bottom within the city leadership, even the schools, the county, the park district, everyone sees sees the vision for that growth, that steady growth. So it's been exciting to see.
And I think it's fair to say that everyone sees the vision because everyone can see the benefit to their individual entity, whether it's the school district, even UND.
Oh, absolutely. The more features there that help sell UND, and the better UNDs that help sell the community, and the other taxing entities as they try to manage their budgets, what we really want to see is growth. We want to see new houses, new businesses, because that spreads the tax burden. Instead of it just being all piled onto the people that are already here, we need to spread that out. And we're starting to see that, but we've got 20 or 30 years where we've really been stagnant. So since the flood, it's really been stagnant. So that's costing us. A lot of the issues you see financially today are cans that got kicked down the road, for decades. So I think all of our entities need to do a good job to tighten up their budgets, but at the same time, realize that for the most part, the boards of today are dealing with some of the past issues.
So you mentioned within the budget, and you're talking about the economic development and workforce retention, stuff like that. One thing that City Council did a couple of weeks ago is moving forward with a proposal to change the home rule charter regarding sales tax. It's not an additional tax; it's changing how some of it's allocated for an indoor turf aquatics area. First, can you talk about what people are going to be asked to vote on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess first we can go back. It continues with the quality of life. So this is, trying to draw workforce, trying to draw tournaments. So I think it has an economic development. It's twofold. It's really bringing people into town. And the second thing is those tournaments that not only bringing people into town to live here, but bringing people into town for, tournaments for a weekend where they're spending money at hotels and restaurants, growing our sales tax. So we couldn't, we just, the way the mills have exploded with the school district and the county, and we just couldn't really go to you can't go to the taxpayers for a mill increase right now. The city's done 4 decreases in a row now as of yesterday, which is pretty exciting. So we looked at how do we fund Hislop's coming down. UND, kind of talked about this 3 to 5 year plan. It ended up being kind of a 1 to 2 year plan. And the community was kind of left with, well, we're going to be without a swimming pool, a community swimming pool. And not just a competitive one, but really outside of the Y and a couple lanes of choice. There's no place to do swimming lessons. That's a public safety thing as well. And then for years, we've had turf issues, not enough turf in town indoor. You could see this spring, your lacrosse, football, baseball, soccer teams, they hardly got a season. Track even, you hardly got a season. So these are what we're hearing. So how are we going to fund it? The Alaris Center's really turned a corner, I want to say, in the last 3 or 4 years with OVG. Prior to that was Spectre. They just changed their names. So they're starting to get, I think, operating on all cylinders. So there's confidence there, but there's also capital needs there. That sales tax was going to end in 2029. So what we're going to do is, since we'll be done paying the bonds for the Alaris Center, we've got the chance to build some new facilities and then still manage the capital on both facilities going forward if we extend that sales tax beyond 2029. So whether you vote yes or no, you're not going to see any difference till 2030. If you vote yes, you're going to have facilities, and then you're going to continue to pay the same taxes you always did in 2030. If you vote no, you're not going to have these facilities. The Alaris Center is going to start to slide because you're just not going to have the capital for it. And you're going to have, essentially 3/4 cents back on every, you spend $100, you get 75 cents back.
75 cents.
So you buy a $20 meal, you're going to get 15 cents back in 2030. And I hate to break it down, those small things, but I mean, this is something you're currently paying. We want to work within the structures that we already had. So we're extending that sales tax to try to get this funded.
And I think it's important because this facility, as you talked about, yes, it's people living here, but it also people traveling. I know you live that life of running around to sporting events, youth sporting events, and yes, spending a night in a hotel in Sioux Falls when you're sitting there. Boy, it'd be nice if all these people came to Grand Forks at least one weekend.
Well, it's not just that. It's not just bringing people in. I mean, you got regional high schools that can come use this facility for the day. But it's also us. I mean, it's for me, if I'm going all over South Dakota, Minnesota for soccer tournaments, maybe one of those weekends it'll be, an extra tournament here.
Right.
Maybe a winter tournament here. Maybe, so that's people spending maybe one more night, one more weekend at home rather than spending some money in another community too. So again, I think it's twofold. It's not just bringing people here, but it's keeping our own community here a little bit more often.
Right. And just to recap, this is not an additional sales tax. It's reallocating the 3/4 cent that goes to the Alaris Center beyond 2029, extending it. So it's not an addition, it's just extending that.
And then, just to be more clear on that, you're just changing it. So the usage of that 3/4 cent sales tax can be expanded to be used to pay for the capital of these facilities, and then just to be extended. So it's really, those are the, what we're looking for in the vote in November. And I think we've done a good job spending 1.5 years of kind of researching this and getting to where we are today. So I think it's time to bring it to the community and see if they want to continue, if we want to continue on this growth path. I think this is the best way to do it.
And just so people listening are understanding, even though it's not an additional tax, we're changing the use of the tax, which means we're changing our charter, which means it has to go to a vote. At last night's meeting was the first time we were in the remodeled city council chambers. I'm working on the audio. We're getting there. Don't worry about that. But that was a project. I know when you first came on, you walked in and you're like, this is where we have meetings? Really? You know, it's something that has kind of always been an idea, has always been talked about, but never really done. It was nice to get that done.
Well, this kind of goes back to the start. When I first got in, there was a lot of talk about expanding the city hall or even building a new city hall, and I could not see that in the budget. That didn't make any sense. They had the Herald building that they were going to put some offices. That didn't make sense. We've got the Hive there now. That's thriving. That's been great. Well. And we took the money that was going to go to a new city hall and we remodeled City Hall. So we've spent, the city prior to me saved up a lot of money from the public building fund to get these projects done. We started with taking the old mayor's office, which had 6 or 7 people in it. Now it has 3. So we moved to a different area. Now 10 or 12 planning and zoning, community development people are in there. We remodeled kind of the whole city hall, with the last piece being council chambers. And I think you should be representative of the direction your city's going. So kind of that new, fresh look that is very inviting, very light-filled room now. I think it just speaks to the future rather than the other room, which spoke to the past. But it served us well for 30 years. There were some demons of the flood in that council
there were, yeah.
That I'm sure we were happy to cast off. So if people haven't gotten a chance, you should almost give some tours one of these days, John. Otherwise, they can certainly come to planning any of the public meetings that'll be open as well.
I did spend some time yesterday before the meeting as people walked in and just like, all right, here's where you go. And just like you said, open windows up. There were 8 windows on the east side of that wall that were completely covered, and we opened them all up. The natural light in there is phenomenal.
Yeah, we probably don't hardly need any lights.
Hardly
during
at all.
The winter, we'll certainly need more. But yeah, you have those basically floor to ceiling windows. It's a the building, I believe, was built in 1911. It's really held up well. If we continue to take care of it, we always talk about, building new things, and we got to maintain what we've got. And I think the city has been a great example of maintaining what we've got, and being that, the mayor's office is in a building that's 112 years old. I think that's to me, that's a badge of honor the city can wear around. Yeah,
the bones of that building are pretty good, and just some amenities in there. We've improved the microphones, we've improved the speakers. I did hear that in the room it sounded great. For those that maybe have some hearing issues and have hearing aids, we have a loop in there, so that you walk in, you get tied right into the sound system. We're able to test that. I know Councilmember Sandy said, "Hey, this is pretty cool." I'm glad that worked out.
The visuals are great too. So as you're coming in there, we can also, with the way it's a U shape now, it was just straight line before. You couldn't even see the other council members. So as you're having in-depth conversations, you can look each other in the eye and see staff much more efficiently. And I think we've got a little bit more room as well. So, and on top of adding some safety issues, so the amenities. So I think it came together really well, and it came together in a hurry. The time's kind of flying.
It did. That project went from end of February, the way it was, to gutted down, cleaned up, back up, and it was done in August. We had some AV issues that had to get cleaned up in order, but yeah, from a construction standpoint, it was done in August.
And the Hive served us well in the meantime, so
it got us there. It got us there. A couple of projects around the city. We've talked throughout the summer, that underpass 42nd and Demers. We got the federal allocation to that. I know there's been some things in front of council. Where are we at on that one?
So right now we sent forward, I believe it was option C1 and B1. So we sent 2 forward to the state, and they're going to make the final decision. That being a state highway on Demers there. And that was a big piece, getting them to, understand that 42nd may cross Demers there, and it may be 42nd that goes under the bridge, but getting DOT to not view that as a local project.
Right.
That's why we got this roughly 70% cost share. So we've picked alternatives. Now it's going to go to DOT, deciding, and then final design, and we'll probably, I think it'll break ground in probably the spring of 2025. But we're going to get a project done with, and saving roughly $40 million that would have been on local taxpayers' backs.
For history on that one, I was working for the city, dealing with the legislature and hearing from DOT, local road, your problem.
Yeah.
And they were like, Demers isn't a local road.
And a lot of that's just spending the time, and then it was just not just time with DOT, but putting that grant in and putting a thoughtful one. I mean, it was such a good grant that you have this, the Secretary of Transportation, who is a cabinet member of the White House, whatever you want to believe for politics, having, someone that's just the Secretary of Transportation come to your city and highlight a project because it was done so well as it came to their level is pretty special.
Yeah, it was, I will say this, his team was a good team to work with.
Well, we have like 3 days to
we had three
to sort that out. I thought it was kind of a
days.
joke. It started with an email from, "Hey, I'm here from the transportation sector." And we get a lot of random emails that are kind of spam related. So I didn't, and we're always getting IT's always sending us the test ones. You can never click the wrong one. So I was questioning that, but it turned out to be the real deal. And then the secretary had called me, I don't know, 12 hours later or something, and it was off to the races from there.
So for people, this was in early June. The mayor gets an email. You forward it on to Mr. Phelan, city administrator, and I believe I was in on that. And you're just like, hey, I think this is real. And we look at it and we're like, boy, that's kind of a
It's a real email address.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I believe you said that we were on a conference call, and I believe you said, "Is this a big deal?" And Mr. Phelan and I looked at each other. We're like, "Yup."
Well, I think the last time we had someone at that level was the floods. It'd been 30
exactly
years.
right. It was a
25 plus
disaster.
Years, yeah.
It was nice having someone come here with good news
prior to a disaster. Yeah.
Right.
That's great.
That's right. So you got elected in 2020. Like you said, you just did your fourth budget. When you went from running for mayor, getting elected, to being mayor, coming in, like you said, you talked about some of the changes at City Hall. Is it what you expected?
Largely, it is. I mean, I'm always willing to do the work, so I came in very prepared at the start. So I think other mayors, it might take 6 months, a year to kind of hit the ground. I hit the ground running.
You did.
And I think we've gotten a lot done. I think despite all the challenges, the moving the community forward. I mean, you think about it, when I first got in office, it was the middle of COVID. So
everything was
first year
stopped.
and a half. Yeah. And we just said, no, we're going to keep moving. We're going to come out of this stronger. And as a community, we've, some of your basic things that I'm proud of is not only the growth, but just the budget to have surpluses the last 2 years, multi-million-dollar surpluses the last couple of years. So we're adding to our reserves and still cutting mills, still funding all the things we need to fund. Those are the kind of things that keep me excited. You do have to deal when you're the mayor. There's a lot of things that come to you. I'm not a mayor that has like a lot of buffers, so it's not like you got to go through this person, that person. Usually people can pretty much get right to me. So some of the things that surprised me is, some of the neighbor disputes where you have, an issue with a fence or a pet or an animal that,
Sure.
I'm going to go to the mayor, and then they come talk to you, and the next day you hear a total different story from the other side. And it's like, some of these we just got to work out on our own that you kind of have to deal with as the mayor. That ends up taking a lot of your time. And it's time that, you would be spending with your family. So I don't know how other mayors have done it in the past, but it's been a full-time job and then some for me. And that can be a burden on your family, but I've said it's a burden that's worthwhile. And we've kind of learned how to do our time management, and we're still working on that. If anyone has solved that thing out, let me know.
Yep.
But if I recap the last 3 years, I'm pretty proud of the work that's been done. And I think we're set up well for the future.
Well, and to the family standpoint, you and I have kids around the same age, so we're both running around to a lot of similar things. But I will say this: I know from my family standpoint, it's if I have something going on at work, it's maybe bugging me. The family's a nice thing to bounce off of every once in a while. At least it is for me. I can't speak for you, but
I think it helps your sanity, but at the same time, when you have tough days, you're still bringing stuff home. And you got to have a strong family that can, realize that you're kind of down, and instead of, it being a tough evening, they can actually help build you up. And that's, building a strong relationship with your wife and your kids. And it's not always easy. They carry the burden too. And, now almost coming up on 4 years into it, my kids have really, sort of grown up in the community as the mayor's, kids. And that's not easy either. So it's, we're learning as we go, but they've embraced it and realized that daddy's here and he's got an important job to do, and he needs to do it fully. But being dad's still number one. So
my story I've told multiple times. I haven't told it here before, but you talk about family and, trying to separate work from home. It was during COVID, right? Long days. We're going back. I'm not sure if it was before you were elected, after you were elected. But there's lots of stuff going on there. And I come home. My daughter walks up to me at the time she was 8. Walks up, just gives me a hug. I'm thinking she's in trouble. And like she got in trouble at home. She's coming, Dad, here's my side of the story. And I'm like, what's up, sweetheart? She goes, you look like you need a hug. And I'm like, thank you.
Makes it all worth it.
It does. So speaking of home, Grand Forks is your home. You didn't grow up here. You grew up in the Twin Cities area. Yeah. Like many of us, me included, you came here for college. After college, maybe you left town. What made Grand Forks for you just like, you know what, I want to make that my hometown?
Well, I think originally when I first came in, I would say I was still a boy. I might have been 18, 19, but I was still kind of searching for that father figure, searching for a home, really.
Sure.
I had kind of a little bit of a tough childhood. And the way I was embraced, I just felt like, you kind of wander around life and then suddenly you feel like you're home. And it's it's really the people, it's the size, it's the safety, it's what we believe in. You know, that work ethic, that sort of work hard, play hard mentality, and that we've always been one of the hardest working states. We've always been the hardest working cities. I don't know. I fell in love with Grand Forks from the start, and as soon as I was done playing and traveling the world, we were called to come right back here, and it wasn't even a question. And I've seen, I went to Ottawa, Tampa, Nashville, Anaheim, Boston. I was ready to come home.
And that's just the North American cities.
Yeah, exactly. That was a blink too. The other 8 years in Kazakhstan and Russia, but there was no winners over there that made me want to stay there either.
Sure. I can say a similar story. I didn't grow up here. I don't have family in town here. Right? Yeah. Neither does my wife. And it was at some point in our relationship, and we're just like, you know what? I think we just want to stay. And
there's something about the size of Grand Forks. We're growing steadily, but you've got a lot to do, and you can sort of know everybody, but at the same time have a certain level of anonymity. And I think it's kind of up to you how much you want to engage in the community. And there's so much to do, or you can kind of just do your own thing. And I think people largely just help out when they can, and they let each other live their lives. And it's there's something special. There's not too many places like that anymore in this world, and we got to hold on to that here.
Yeah, it's at least I explained to my children. I grew up on a farm in a rural area. At 6 o'clock, the grocery store closed. So if you were hungry later on, you whatever was in the house, we're like, you realize you can order a pizza at 1 a.m. You can get food in this town. My wife and I are still. We still talk about
still
that.
Like that. Well, yeah. I'm not. I don't think I stay up that late very often anymore. But.
I haven't stayed up that late in a long time either. Well, Mayor, I appreciate it. I know you've got other commitments and we're running around, but thanks for taking time to get here today. As we'll probably have you here, and it'll be about 4 months, right? And we'll see where the city's at then. We're going to be in the middle of winter. Who knows what we're talking about, but we're through every one of our council members, and we're going to. In a couple of weeks, we'll go back right with Danny Weigel. So
thanks for having me, John, and thanks for doing this. And I appreciate the episodes too. I've got to watch most of them, so thank you.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Mayor Brendan Bochenski joining us here on the City Chatter podcast. Again, city budget was approved yesterday. The Grand Forks City Council 2024 budget is in the books, which means take a week off and start working on 2025. I wish that were a joke, but that's about how that works. And again, yes, if you want to come to a city council meeting, we have brand new city council chambers. Feel free, come on down. I'll show you around. We can show you some of the bells and whistles that are in the room, and some of it just makes viewing a meeting a lot easier. So for this episode of City Chatter, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time.